Hey, what's up, everybody? Coach Carroll here. Welcome to another episode of the Sales Factory. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you go click the subscribe button on either Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And as always, make sure you give us a 5-star review if you're digging the content. It helps us help more people. Man, I've got an action-packed episode for you today. I'm really excited about this. You guys know that we work with a ton of insurance agents, and I've got Nicole Cockerham on the call today. She was awarded as the top loans closed with Rocket Mortgage in 2021. She's a State Farm agent, and you guys may have seen all the ads that are out floating around that, State Farm did this big deal with Rocket Mortgage to do these. And I went out, I sought her out, and I said, hey, I found the number one person that closed the most loans in 2021. And so we invited Nicole to come on to the Sales Factory podcast. She's a State Farm agent. Like I said, she's down in Burlington, North Carolina. So Nicole, thanks so much for being a guest on the Sales Factory podcast.
Of course. Thank you, DJ, so much.
And if you could just tell the audience a little bit more about you. How long have you been an agent? You have kids? Like what's your family dynamic look like, just so we kind of understand who we're hearing from today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been a State Farm agent for 21 years. Prior to becoming an agent, I actually worked inside the company. I was an auto adjuster and had chest pains every single day for a year. So then I went into health company, was a health underwriter. And then the last several years, I trained agents in life and health products and rolled out variable products.
Wow.
I fell into insurance, just like everybody else does. One of my good friend's fathers was a Mass Mutual manager. He encouraged her to think about State Farm, which was real bizarre to me. Why State Farm if he was with Mass Mutual? I had the opportunity to meet with an agent on a Thursday. He gave me the ins and outs, and I was in class on a Monday. This happened when I was a junior in college at NC State.
Wow. But I say that all the time. Like, no one, like the guidance counselors in high school never say like, wow, you've really got some social skills. Have you ever considered being an insurance agent? I always think that like insurance agent is like, oh, what else went wrong in your life? And you ended up there, right? Like it's not like this career that's pushed, but man, I know some very successful agents. I mean, we were just talking before we hopped on the call about Justin Cook, him, and he's a top agent in the company, makes a lot of money, lives a good life. And so congratulations on 20 plus years as an agent. That's a feat in itself. But, also being in 2021, having more loans closed than anyone else in the company, that's got to be pretty exciting, right?
It was pretty exciting. I really kind of got involved with it when I had a referral from another agent. It was his son-in-law. I put the loan in December. I actually got a check in January, and I thought, holy shamoly, this may work out. So yeah, we actually got rolling in February and made it happen. It was a blast, to be honest with you.
Well, and the first thing everybody's going to think of, right? And you even mentioned this to me when you messaged me back. You're like, well, rates are higher now. And like, yes, of course, like there's economic cycles that will happen in things like real estate and mortgage, but nonetheless, I mean, there's 19,000 plus State Farm agents. It's a feat in itself to, heck, be in the top half, let alone be number one. So you see, you got that first check. Was that like when the light bulb went off and you're like, hey, maybe we should devote a little more time to chasing this down?
That is exactly what happened, DJ. And I'm normally not driven by money at all. I'm embarrassed to say I'm more of a plaques, pins, awards type gal.
Okay.
But that check came in and I thought, wow, this is crazy. Like I could spend hours and hours and hours working on maybe one life case, or I could spend about 15, 20 minutes working on one mortgage and actually financially do better.
Wow. And now, was this something that like maybe you were only focused on? Was your team involved? How did that work?
Yeah. So what I realized was my team had so much on their plate already.
Mm,
I demand a lot from them. They're absolutely fabulous. I have very, very long, tender team members, and I want
wow.
to keep them.
Yeah.
So I did not want to put anything else on their plate. They were already multi-lining, auto, fire, of course, then they go to life or possibly a disability policy. The last thing I wanted to do was put um, a fourth multi-line on them. So I knew I had to
Right.
make some changes in the office. And what I did was I actually hired a high school student. I hired a senior.
Like as a
That was
co-op?
no, it wasn't even co-op. It was just, hey, I called our local high school that my children actually attend
Hmm.
and said, hey, do you have anybody that gets out of school early? And they said, yes, we do. And so her name was Jessie, and she's actually at Texas A&M now. She's an engineering
Wow.
student. Yeah, very bright. And so Jessie started with me in February, and I can tell you, Jesse drove the business
That's
until
awesome.
summer. And then from there, my son, I have a 17-year-old, drove the business through the summer. But
Wow.
yeah, so I did not put any additional work on my own team. Now they made decisions to refinance their own homes. And if they had friends, they would discuss it just by their experience. But
Yeah.
I didn't put any additional work on the team. I put the work on the high school student. So I would encourage anyone out there to, just get some assistance.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just touched on something. I've talked about this. I've got hundreds of YouTube videos out there, and I talk about early on. Like one of the first thing in a service business that you can kind of like let go of, right? Because you've got sales, you've got marketing, you've got administration, you've got operations. A lot of times it's like, well, what do I let go of first? And admin stuff is typically like the easiest thing to let go of. And I did the same thing, Nicole. So it's kind of funny when I started my first business, like the second year in, I was like, I do not have time to do all this invoicing stuff anymore. So I found the local high school I graduated from. We found a cheerleader and she co-opted for us, and she came in 2 hours a day. And it was like just the right amount of assistance that I needed. And I think it's heavily overlooked, of going to the local high school and finding someone. And, it's different than your average co-op job, right? I think, there, at any time that you can help the younger generation get a different look or a different experience, it's putting a little good karma back out into the world, right?
I totally agree. Yes, absolutely, DJ.
That's awesome. So it's cool then that you guys really just kind of kept this thing siloed. And then, so I mean, my brother's in mortgages as well. And I mean, there's not really a whole lot of selling that happened in 2021. It was pretty much like, oh, you have a 7%, I can lock you in at 3, right? It's a done deal. So was it just massive volume? Then you're like, I've got to get as many applications submitted, or how did you work on that? Cause I'm really interested to see like, what was your process? Because we have some State Farm agents that listen to this, and maybe they saw your name and they're like, darn, I wanted to be number one. So like now we can maybe help them out, peel the curtain back a little bit and say, here's where you focused at that you saw really made the difference.
Yeah, sure. We can certainly talk about last year and what we did last year. And then we can also talk about this year because
Okay.
obviously this year's more new purchases.
Love it.
But yeah, but last year we just took our fire book of business, and my high school student, Jessie, she just went through each one of them. It was a bit monotonous to determine who they were all, their mortgages were with. And then
Hmm.
from there, we would call our Rocket executive and say, hey, this guy is currently with Rocket. Can we do any better with them? And then,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. And then with everybody else, my high school student would just pick up the phone and say, hey, there's a note in your file that Nicole wanted me to give you a call. Have you
nice.
refinanced in the last 18 months? And that was basically it. And then from
That's
there,
cool.
she would hand off the phone to me, or I would give them a call back later that night or on the weekends.
Mm,
And I would just sell the application. And I would encourage everyone just to think about selling the application. It's not selling the product. So often
yeah.
I think State Farm agents got really involved with the calculators. No, just sell that application.
Yep.
And then from there, our loan broker will pick it up for us. So that's what we
Okay.
did. That's what we did last year. Just a lot of phone calls, a lot of volume, we're real
Yeah.
fortunate to have a lot of homeowners in our book of business, and that's what we really
Okay.
worked.
That's helpful. I think that's one of the overlooked things. And if you guys are listening to this podcast, you've heard me talk about my social assisted selling framework about, how there are basically three categories that you have to understand when it comes to marketing. You've got your outbound marketing, you've got your inbound marketing, but you also need to be marketing to your internal book of business, and you can generate a ton of revenue. Nicole's telling you, like, they went through their current customers. That's where they went first. She didn't go run a $50,000 TV campaign. It was, hey, let's figure out what fish are already in our pond that we could help. And I just would encourage you, if you're listening to this, it's a huge deal to really, and I know with State Farm, you guys have a lot more compliance, but to some of the younger entrepreneurs that are listening, or the contractors that are out there, having a CRM, having it well documented is uber important, because as your business grows and you get in 15 years, 20 years, you'll get to the point where you'll have enough people in your book of business that you may not need to advertise as much, or you can generate additional revenue on top of your new customers coming in just from your current book of business. So Nicole, thanks so much for sharing that with us. That's huge. Let's pivot now. What about this year? Because obviously rates are going back up. The 10 years over 3%. We won't talk about the Dow dropping 1,000 points yesterday, but
Let's not.
let's. So what are you guys doing now with new purchases, right? Because refis aren't really making a whole lot of sense for most people. There's probably still some out there, but for the most part, the refi craziness is over. How are you guys handling purchases now?
Right. So what we are doing now is we are actually going out and recording new real estate agents.
Ooh,
So
nice.
often, the ones that you see all over town already have mortgage brokers that are in their back pocket that are probably paying for leads for them and doing
Right.
things that obviously we don't want to do. So, what I've been doing is I've been having lunch a couple of times a week with real estate agents that have been in the business less than 1 year. And no
Ah,
one ever says no. It's kind of like they want a free lunch and they're
right.
excited, yeah, that I'm reaching out and inviting them. And then from there, they realize that I can offer a resource that's local, that's
Mm,
personal, and even just a one-stop shop with mortgage as well as the homeowners.
yeah,
And
everything on top of it.
yeah, exactly. That has been extremely successful. I know a lot of people don't like to go out and meet people and have lunch, but you just got to put on your big boy pants and go do it, right?
I love it, especially after the 2 years us being locked away. It's like Zooms are amazing, right? It allows me to reach across multiple states and hop on a call and stuff. But man, I'm so happy to be able to go back out and have lunches and drinks and happy hours, because there's just something special about doing business face to face. Unfortunately, we don't get to always see all of our clients, because a lot of our State Farm agents are spread all over the U.S. But we do have Kelly Hagar. She's a shout out to Kelly. She's from Florida, successful agent. She came in town for the Derby. So when agents come in for the Derby, we get to entertain them a little bit. But you're so right that, like, especially those new ones, right? Those new real estate agents. And you're smart to think that way, because they're hungry. Like, they're like, I will meet anybody and everybody because I'm trying to do a deal. And so that gives you that opportunity to get in front of them. And I would say that most State Farm agents aren't doing that. They get so stuck in, like, operating the day to day of their business, like most small business owners do. But getting your head up and out, as I always say, is super important. So, have you had luck with those? Like, have you converted some of those yet? How's that going?
Yeah, it's actually going great. In fact, just last week, I had three new purchase applications because of these new real estate agents. Yes, it is
Rock
going
on.
well. I,
Rock on.
I know right now our inventory is still quite low,
Yeah.
but I think as interest rates increase, the inventory hopefully will increase a bit, as well as prices will come down.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's just a matter of time. It's typically how it works. That's awesome. Is there any, like, specific, like, sales strategy or sales tactic, maybe? I mean, I know you just gave us one there, but like, is there something that you did that really helped you like close a business? And I know like nobody wants to be like a pushy salesperson, but at the end of the day, sometimes prospects just need to be closed. Otherwise, I always tell my team and clients that I work with, like, nothing happens until a close is made. Like, nothing happens until a sale's made. The client doesn't receive the benefit. The person selling doesn't receive their side of the benefit. Like, closing is not a dirty word. So is there something like, what did you really do to help those people push those applications over the edge?
Yeah. So what I basically did was just kind of constantly encourage. Let's just put an application in. And then they would ask
Mm,
questions. What's the interest rate going to be? I'm not sure. But what I would tell them is let's go ahead and put the application in, and then I'll go over the rate that the
mm,
computer generates.
mm.
Now, I have the best mortgage banker on the planet. He's going to contact you. And from there, he's a human and he knows where all the sweet spots are. So, whatever he tells you is going to be the best thing for you to do. And so that's
Nice.
kind of how I got over the fact of, hey, I can't see everything. I can't sell this personally well. I can go over what the computer tells me, but he knows
Mm,
where everything is. Just trust him. And that
mm.
worked out. It worked out really, really well. So just, use your contacts and use the people that actually know how to close it. My close was the application. And I always said, to my other agent friends, my job was to fish. My
Ah.
mortgage banker's job was to create a gourmet meal. And that's what he did.
I love it. I love it. And you had mentioned something earlier about you've got a very tenured team. I wanted to talk about that for a second because I know we're getting close. We'll be wrapping up here shortly. Hopefully, you guys are taking lots of notes if you're listening to this because Nicole is dropping some fire for you. Also, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, haven't left a review, go do that as well. But Nicole, I want to ask you. You said you've got a tenured team. Let's talk a little bit about that because a couple of years ago, I really like just got infatuated with like company culture. Like, we redid our mission statement, we redid our core values. Like, we do give projects every quarter now where we go back and give out to the community. And like, today we did derby. Like, we did a derby drawing where we all selected horses and brought snacks in and everybody dressed up. I've got my party horses hat on. But is there something that you can give the audience, something that you can tell them about what's really helped you keep that tenured team, and maybe even some mistakes you made in the past while you're trying to figure out what you needed to do?
Yeah. So every decision I make is based on what I would personally like. So with that being said, if I get an email that says my son has a baseball game at 3:30, can I leave at 3:15?
I
I
see.
say, Nicole, would you like to leave at 3:15 if your son had a baseball game? Well, the
Wow.
answer is going to be absolutely. Absolutely. And so honestly, it's really the golden rule. Treat
Mm.
people how you want to be treated.
Ooh.
I really believe in the reaping what you sow. You sow good seeds, good soil, and then you reap. And also the law of reciprocity. If you love your team members, they're not only going to love you back, but most importantly, they're going to love your clients back.
Ooh.
And so, yeah, we have a great time. We've traveled every year. If I travel,
Wow.
if I travel, they travel. We went to LeBlanc in Cancun last year. We're going to Cabo in a
Wow.
few months, and I think we've
Nice.
we've probably been on about 18 cruises together. So just a lot of fun times,
Mm.
providing experiences to them that they would never experience on their own, rather than
That's
just we.
cool.
Obviously, they make a great financial living with income, but in addition to that, I want them to not just blow their money on groceries or blow their bonus on groceries. I want them to have experiences.
Wow. And I can only imagine the culture that you guys have there with that. And I love what you said there. If you love them, then they'll love the clients. And that's,
Exactly.
you guys got to write that one down because that's a good one. If you love them, they'll love the clients. Wow. Nicole, that's awesome. How long has the person that's been with you the longest, how long have they been there?
Yeah, sure. So my first hiree actually retired 3 years ago. So she was with me the whole time,
Wow.
but she officially retired and was 65.
My
Um,
goodness.
my my second hire has been with me for 20 years. And then I
Wow.
had right. And then I have like a 16, a 15, a
Holy
12. It's crazy.
smokes.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then I think a four and a three. And
Okay.
we just hired Massey. Massey went to the same school as Jesse and good friends with Jesse.
Oh, wow.
Jesse went to Texas A&M and Massey decided to come to us full time.
Nice.
Yes. Yep.
Well, it that just speaks, I think that speaks to your leadership ability too, right? Like people want to work at a company where they have good leadership that they can follow. And I think that's really important and sometimes overlooked as well. Because, the old 1950s type of management where, you need to do what I say because I write your paychecks, that doesn't work anymore. People don't want to work in an environment like that. They want to work where they can be appreciated, where they can be loved on, like you said. And for those of you that didn't understand when Nicole meant travel, that's an award level with State Farm that if you achieve certain metrics, then you get to go on the trip. And did I say that right, Nicole?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like
Uh,
it's a great trip.
yeah, and you're right. Like we're not talking about going to Kings Island for the weekend. Like these are normally outside the country, or if they are in the country, they're at some big resort. So that's amazing that you take your team with you as well. Because you said something. You said if I'm traveling, we're traveling, and I think that's like that team effort is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We just have a lot of fun. We work hard, but we still have, just so much fun together.
I love it. Now, I know that this is probably the toughest question I'll ask you, but a lot of times we learn from our mistakes, right? And so I always like to ask attendees, like, if people are listening right now, they're like, man, she's just got it figured out. I want to kind of peel back the onion a little bit, though. Like, what's like one of the biggest mistakes you've ever made, and like, what'd you learn from that? Because while oftentimes from the outside looking into entrepreneurs, it seems like we have it all figured out, but it's because nobody really notices the failures; they only see the successes. So do you mind peeling back the onion with us a little bit, getting a little vulnerable, and telling us about maybe one of the biggest mistakes you made, and like what did you learn from it?
Yeah, for sure. So I used to hire people by myself years and years ago.
Okay.
Um, yeah, candidates would come in. I would feel great about them. I think everything, looks lovely on the outside. And then they would start working, and we realized, holy shamoly, this isn't what we thought this was. So we yeah, so we changed our hiring process. So now what happens is we have a small team. There's 9 of us, but we all sit down and we all interview the candidate together multiple times. Multiple
Really?
times. Yes,
Wow.
yes, and everybody gets a vote. And if anybody of the 9 says no, I don't feel comfortable with it, then the candidate is not hired.
Wow. So it has to be
Yes.
like a 100% unanimous decision. Like it has to be 100% voted in, or
That's
they're
exactly
not in
right.
there. Talk
Exactly.
about
And
protecting the company culture. Holy smokes.
well, absolutely. And then the additional thing that happens is they actually take the candidate either out to lunch, normally out to dinner, just so they'll have more time without me. And then the
Wow.
candidate normally lets their hair down and kind of shows their true colors. So we find out
Wow.
a lot about them that way. But since we've been doing that, we've been quite successful.
Yeah, no, and I mean that like when we talk about hiring slow and firing fast, I mean, if they've got to go to do they go to a meal with each individual person?
It's all of them together.
All of them together, but you're
Ex-
not there.
I'm not there. Exactly. I'm not there.
Wow.
Yes, but they've met the team members, 3 or 4 times on interviews. So they are feeling comfortable. And, if they decide, whatever they decide to order to drink or eat is fine. And, we just kind of get to know them more on a personal basis. They do.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like, I mean, yes, like you're the owner, you're the person running the show, but like day to day, they're going to be working together. So for you, I think this is genius because it's like, look, if you guys can't get along at dinner, like you're not going to get along 3 more months from now in the office. So let's figure out
Right.
if this is going to work now before we get invested in all this training and licensing and all this kind of stuff.
Right, absolutely. And then when the team members, know that they were part of hiring the new employee, then they're going to be willing to actually help them train, help them succeed, and then again, love them.
Yeah, it's not like looking over his shoulder like this Mike guy who hired him. It's like, well, you
Right.
you did, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
the team did. So now it's like, okay, let's help Mike succeed because we're kind of all in this. And then I'm just thinking too is like if they do fail, it's like, well, the team didn't see that coming, right? Like it's like it all goes back on the team. That's so amazing. I've never heard anybody do it like that before. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, DJ.
Appreciate you sharing that with us. I know we're coming up on the end of it here. These podcasts always go so fast. I'm super excited to have you here in season 4 of the Sales Factory podcast. If people wanted to reach out to you, maybe they say, hey, Nicole, I got a follow-up question about XYZ. Maybe it's another State Farm agent, or maybe it's just one of our people that are listening. How's the best way to find you? Like, are you online on all the social platforms, or how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm online on all social platforms. It's Nicole Morton Cockerham, Morton like the salt. And then my email address is nicole@nicolecockerham.com.
Awesome. That's so cool. What's something that you were hoping we would talk about that we didn't?
Oh, goodness,
It's a
DJ.
good question, right?
I know that is a good question. The one other thing I just want to remind everyone is just be mindful that what's important for you personally. I made a personal choice early on that being a mom and being a wife was number one. And so I've always overstaffed. I wanted to be able to, leave every day or even work on a part-time basis when my children were young.
Wow.
Now I make sure I leave by 3 o'clock if my son has, track or a baseball game.
Wow.
But just recently, I realized that I have no regrets, even though I probably could have made more money, had less team members over the years. No regrets knowing that my children don't see me as a State Farm agent or a working person. They see me first as a mom.
Wow, that's solid. I got me a little choked up a little bit actually, because it's so true. Because I really think you have to. That's why I always tell people you have to start with happiness. Like happiness is first and foremost, and I don't think that's talked about enough in entrepreneurship. We see the Lamborghinis and the private jets and all this money, Instagram and all this stuff, but it's like ultimately you have to be happy, and that's why back in 2017 2018 before the pandemic even happened, I called it. I've got YouTube videos and Facebook videos where I was posting. I'm like, look, the 2020s are going to be like the 1920s. It's going to be proprietorship because of the internet. You take a mom, to your point, Nicole, like you take a mom that's making 70 a year, but she's miserable. She hates her job. She's never home. She's always forced to work overtime. And she finds out that she can open an Etsy store and make 40 a year, but have the freedom to be around her family. She's leaving that job. Like, the internet has made that stuff available. And so good for you to know that, like, out the gate, and just knowing like who you are. And I can tell you're a very authentic person, and that means a lot to me. I like doing business and meeting people that are authentic. And so congratulations on all your success. Thanks so much for everything that you've shared with us today in the Sales Factory. Guys, if you're listening to this, I encourage you, reach out to Nicole if you have follow-up questions. We were just a mutual connection on Facebook. It's kind of funny. She asked me before we hopped on the call. She's like, how did we get here, right? But it's one of those things where I saw her post that she was the top loan closer for 2021. I'm like, this would be the perfect person to have as a guest in the Sales Factory. So Nicole, thanks so much for your time today. Greatly appreciate it, and look forward to maybe having you on again in a future season.
DJ, thanks so much. It was my pleasure.
Awesome, guys. Well, hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, make sure you go leave a review. Again, it helps me help more people, and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss on any of the future episodes or future seasons. As always, hustle, it's worth it. Here's to your success.